Okay. Oh my god. Today I'm not super late. Great news already. Bum bum bum. To try all these. Try this other one. Here. Here. Oh my god, my poor throat. Water actually sorry, made it worse. What an amazing start. Let's start the usual stuff. And I mean, I can test the audio level of these. Let's see if I can hear it. Maybe it should be very low here. I don't know, maybe it's too low. Yeah, it sounds very low. Let's go back maybe to -30. What was that sound? What did I hit? Let's try with this one instead. Probably. Okay. Very low, but makes sense. So okay. Yeah. For us, the YouTube bot started. Oh my god, I was ending the stream. Such a stupid person. That should be working. Okay, I think I tested everything. I don't remember. I don't know, honestly. Okay. Maybe I can remove these and start. Great. So today the plan is to translate this video that is from the channel Parabellum, and it is on the Iranian nuclear program. The guy on the left, this video is from Saturday, so it's 2 days more or less after the attack of Israel on Iran. Today is the 20th, so it was from the 18, stuff like that, 19, whatever, I don't want to compute that. The guy on the left is a military historian and mostly looks about, does live stream about war in Ukraine, but also other wars and with geolocation and stuff like that. The guy on the right instead is a nuclear expert. He has some degrees in nuclear physics and basically works in dissemination, so in talking about nuclear, and it's very expert on the topic, on all different aspects of nuclear, also the legal part, the technical part, so it's the monitoring, so it's a very broad expert and it's very competent on this topic. And the video is translated the Iranian nuclear program. At which point is it? Let's try to understand it with Luca Romano. So what I'll try to do is simply translate this and comment the various parts. Let's see, I'm not forgetting anything. Maybe I should just hop into it. It's a lot that I don't work live like that, but let's try. Ok.
Allora, buonasera a tutti quanti, bentornati su Parabellum. Come vedete ho chiamato rinforzi.
As I said,
Luca Romano, ancora meglio noto.
Of course, the guy on the left is Parabellum, and the guy on the right is called the the atom lawyer.
te l'ho chiesto letteralmente ieri.
So it's
Parleremo del
very
programma
focused on that.
iraniano.
We will talk about the Iranian nuclear program,
Expertise ci aiuterà
because I have a certain suspect he says
a capire del fatto che
that
forse,
maybe
sbaglio,
I'm wrong,
capiremo. Forse Netanyahu
maybe Netanyahu is a little bit exaggerating the Iranian program
anche per giustificare
also to justify his interventionism and saying that is about is a very important reason for survival for Israel.
Ecco, visto che te sei molto addentro a queste questioni,
So since you are very close into these topics for what you do,
programma internazionale di
international program of control of this thing,
vicini,
how are they close?
83-84
Because they talk about 83-84% of uranium enrichment.
vado a memoria,
Now, if I go by memory, for the little amount I know about these,
arma nucleare funziona
to have a functioning nuclear weapon, even pretty rough, you should surpass the 90%.
Allora,
Wait,
anche abbastanza rozza, dovessi superare il 93-94.
93-94, he says.
allora,
So, actually,
per avere un'arma
to have a nuclear weapon, even pretty raw, it might be enough technically to have even less. Depends how you want to be rough it. The least enrichment you have, more mass you need.
non è una cosa
And it's not something linear. So, for example, with an enrichment of 90%, if we talk for now about uranium 235, then we will talk also about plutonium, that are two different things.
parlando di uranio 235
Talking about uranium 235,
crudo senza tampo
throw without damper,
al 90%
the critical mass at 90% of enrichment is 47 kilograms.
porti al 60
If the enrichment you bring it to 60%, then the mass becomes about 450 kilograms.
ok, quindi c'è un
So there is a huge scale factor.
nei reattori civili per
In civilian reactor, where the enrichment is about 5%, the critical mass is about tons, tens of tons.
un reattore riceve un refueling
A reactor receives a refueling
da 100
of about 120 tons of fuel that then will last 5 years. It's a completely different story.
per quanto riguarda l'arricchimento dell'uranio
About uranium enrichment, last year the I was called in English IAEA, so the nuclear international agency for the International Atomic Energy Agency, something like that must be. Whatever.
annunciato di aver trovato tracce
So they announced that they found traces of
lato
particulates
una
with
concentrazione di fissile, quindi di
with a concentration of fissile material, so uranium 235,
84%.
at 84% concentration. But this doesn't mean that they have a stockpile of uranium at 84%.
E che lo stockpile sia
The evidence is that the stockpile is at about 60%,
diciamo delle
and that then there are traces because the enrichment is not a sharp, is not a net process. It doesn't increase in linear amount, but you have some centrifuges where you put this gas of uranium hexafluoride.
girare la parte più pesante
You will make them spin. Then the heaviest part with the uranium 238, it will statistically will distribute itself in the external part of the centrifuge while the lighter part will remain in the middle. But it's a statistical process, so the presence of weak traces of uranium with higher, so 84% enrichment uranium, 235, doesn't imply necessarily that that is the actual concentration of the extra fluoride in the centrifuge. There is evidence. Okay, maybe I can make a draw about this. Do I have this whiteboard somewhere here? 1 second, this time I'm half prepared. Whiteboard, whiteboard. Which would be yes, because I've been drawn on it. Okay, I think I can see something. Let's try to make it red. Yeah. It's so stupid because I don't have let's do this. Bucket. White. This is not white. White. Oh god. Okay. So I will try to explain it to add some information. Can I do it? Can I do it? I cannot do it, of course. If I put this, let me. It's always in the wrong place. Here. Okay, I swear to God I'm here. Let's maybe take the, no, the green doesn't make sense. So you have so when you have an atom, let me get the gray. Of course, an atom is made of neutrons and protons. Let's see if this is okay. What an artist I am. Neutrons and protons are more or less the same particle, but it's rare electrons. What an artist. Magnificent. Well, you got it. Neutrons and protons are mostly have the same mass. The difference is that neutrons have no charge, while protons have charge. And the nuclei are made of, so atoms' cores are made of neutrons and protons that are attached together with by strong and weak nuclear forces. And then they have electrons based to balance the amount of protons they have so that the overall atom charge is the same amount. Now, the number of protons determine the element. So, for example, a difference between what determines if an atom is hydrogen, carbon, steel, iron, chromium, or uranium or plutonium is the number of protons. So let's say the purple particles that we have here. Instead, the number of neutrons will not change the chemical properties of the atom, but will change their nuclear property, will change their mass and their nuclear stability. So the amount of neutrons generally is there to stabilize the atom. If there is an optimal number of neutrons, that generally is, especially for lighter particles, the same amount of neutrons and protons. But then the bigger it gets, the more neutrons it needs, if I remember correctly. And so you will have an optimal amount, but you can have also different amount of neutrons. So for example, carbon has 6 protons and 6 neutrons, so have mass 12, but it can also have 8 neutrons. And in that case, mass is 14, and that is called the carbon 14, and that is the one used famously for datation of archaeological stuff. So uranium does the same thing, and it can have different isotopes. In this case, the important one is 235 and 238. So this is the total mass of uranium. Now, the 235 is the one generally that you use to make fission. The 238 instead, no, but due to different properties. I think it can fission at in certain condition, but generally this is not the case. I think that normally in nature, when you get some uranium material, you will have uranium that is made of 1% of this type of isotope and like 99% of this other type of isotope. And chemically they have the same properties, so they are both uranium, but they have different nuclear properties. And what you want to have some nuclear fuel, you want a lot of these 235. So of course the percentage means that you have like 100 atoms. If 100 atoms in your block of uranium are one atom will be 235 and the other 99 will be 238. So to have fuel, you want more uranium 235 respect to this percentage, and you want, like in case of civilian fuel, you want 3-4% like for nuclear power plants of this uranium isotope. Modern one, like 4th generation, some can go to 18%, but more is completely unnecessary, and above 90% you generally have a nuclear bomb, the weapon grade, so what actually can be used for nuclear bombs. So what you do, of course, all this happens because what you want to do is you will want to have a neutron here that shoots at this atom, and you want it unstable enough so that it basically breaks in 2 atoms and then release some other neutrons that will hit again another atom. So this is the reaction that you want to have. And the more of them there are, the more neutron you generate and more energy, and so it will have a higher energy generation. So what you want to do is to separate these 2 isotopes to increase the percentage of this one. And what you do is, of course, uranium is a solid, is basically a metal, is a solid, and you cannot separate them. The only way to separate them is to use their different mass, but you are not able to do that. They chemically have the same identical properties, so you can only separate them based on their mass. But they are a metal. How do you separate them? What they do is let's see if we can, okay, you cannot see the green, of course. Let's make this type of green, of course you cannot see it. Let's make it blue. So let's say this is uranium. So what you can do is take the uranium, make it react with fluoride, 6 atoms of fluoride, and you get uranium hexafluoride. And this is a gas. So this is fluid. So what you can do, you can put in the centrifuge. So you basically put in this big spinning thing. When you make spinning, you will have a centrifugal force that basically is like having a gravitational force. So the heaviest particles, so uranium-238, will be in the lower part, and the lower part means the closer to the border in case of a centrifuge. And the uranium-235 that is the lightest instead will be at the center. So in this way you can separate them, and you do this thing in succession, and then you get more and more, you can extract more and more 235 uranium so that you get enriched uranium. What you have to do then later is to take this gas and convert it again into a metal. So convert the uranium hexafluoride into what is called, back to the metal, to uranium. Also, I think that when you are in how it's called, in the mine, you find the uranium oxide technically. So you will start from the oxide, then make the hexafluoride and blah blah blah. So the other thing to keep in consideration is that enrichment is a progressive process. So when you bring it from 0.7, so okay, 0.7 is the level in natural level, so more or less 1%, as I said, technically 0.7. So when you bring it from 0.7 to 1.4%, so you double it, you take, let's say, some weeks. Then from 1.4 to 1.8, you take some other weeks. But every time, I mean, I said 1.8, but I think you meant 2.8. But every time, in the same amount of time, you double the concentration. So passing from 60 to 90%, that is what is necessary. You really need a small amount of time. In the time of 2 weeks, the Iranians, if they want, they can get some cores, some fixed-site cores. This doesn't mean that they have the bombs. So let's summarize until this point. They know Iran has a stockpile of uranium enriched to 60%. I think the amount is 400 kilograms. This uranium 60% could be technically used to make a nuclear bomb. Actually, it's completely unreasonable. The critical mass would be is 400 and something, he said, 400 and something kilograms. So they technically don't even have the critical mass for this, but they can enrich it more, and in just a couple of weeks they could get uranium enriched at 90%. And they will get the fuel to make the nuclear bomb, or at least a nuclear bomb. The next question is, okay, what about the other components? Do they have the other components? Now, having the core is a very important part, because without the core you don't have the bomb, but that is not enough. You need a trigger, and you know better than me, a delivery system, so the rockets, the planes and stuff like that. So how do you trigger a nuclear bomb? And here we get to the part that is more relevant, because you're not wrong in what you say. I guess he's referring to the fact that Netanyahu is overstating the risk. There are two ways. One is very rough. So 2 ways to trigger a bomb. One is very rough. And so I take 2 masses under critical and I shoot one against each other. In reality, there is a mass that is like a cylinder, hollowed cylinder, and the other is a full cylinder, and they penetrate one inside each other. They get shot one into each other, and they get place to a critical mass. So what they do, oh no, let's get back to the very advanced tool called Paint. Such an artist. So what he is describing is this. Pum, 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 pum. Get the blue. Okay, so you have basically, oh my god, I cannot see the fucking, It's very hard to see. Black. Okay. You have basically, my god, it's so bad. Can I? Okay. You have, let's say, a channel. Say you have these inside your bomb. Then you have some uranium. Fuck. This is a cylinder. And in the cylinder you have this hollowed cylinder. Again, master artist. Okay, so this is a hole. And then you have another cylinder, a cone here, a truncated cone that will work like a bullet. So that this will fit here. Okay, oh my god. My god, where is this? Okay. So you have some explosive here. What you do, of course, this is, if you notice, is the bomb. Masterpiece. Masterpiece, look at my masterpiece. So what you do is you trigger this explosive. This explodes and throws these bullets basically inside here. When this happens, you have first of all the two mass joins making a bigger mass, a bigger unique mass, but also due to the impact they can get also a compression that slightly increase their density. So this makes it going into critical and then explode, trigger the chain reaction, and it explodes. What a masterpiece. Okay. If I remember, it's like the first bomb that had. No, what he's saying is wrong, but.
Allo stesso momento, questo era il funzionamento della prima bomba nucleare nel test di Alamo.
No, quella.
So this bomb actually is. What he said is technically wrong. This is the bomb that you can. It was the Little Boy bomb. Little Boy bomb was in this way, and. While the other type of trigger is the one used in the first bomb and in the Fat Man dropped on Nagasaki, that we'll see probably later. The implosion trigger. This Hiroshima bomb was of this type, gun type is called, gun type trigger. This trigger is very simple to create, very simple to make. That means that with this type of trigger, the Iranian would visually be able to build a device in about a few months. But this trigger is much more risky because an accidental detonation will cause a nuclear detonation. If the detonation the trigger triggers by accident, the bomb will explode. He will explain it better later, why the other one is safer.
come dire, presenta dei rischi. In secondo luogo,
So to say, this presents some risks.
l'innesco richiede delle componenti più
In other regards, this trigger will require heavier components,
cose,
more voluminous,
richiede anche una
requires also a higher critical mass,
non può
because you cannot use
neanche della geometria.
the critical mass is also a function of the geometry, and so you need a cylindrical symmetry instead of spherical,
Quindi
and
questa tipologia di bomba
so these type of bombs cannot be mounted on hypersonic rockets.
quindi è un innesco, diciamo,
Quanto sarebbe grande, giusto per capire, perché conosco
Before it talks about this, again, go back to the drawing. So as you can see, so what he's saying is, first of all, first of all, you will need some, I think you need some rigid, so this part needs to be very rigid, because it has to kinda compress. If I'm not saying something stupid, this it should be very rigid to manage the strength of this explosion, and then keep it confined a bit before the nuclear bomb actually explodes. And also he's saying that, as you can see, you have this is basically a cylinder, so you have this kind of cylinder symmetry, but the optimal would be a sphere. The optimal would be a sphere. So if you have a sphere, you have the optimal shape that will grant you the minimum mass, the minimum critical mass, because you have the minimum distance from the center. The atoms in the center will all be at this distance. If you instead make a cylinder, to make sure that the one in the center is at the same distance from the sides, you need a higher mass, because you need all this part is wasted. So if you try to make it with the same mass, so smaller, you will have that this center from the side will be at a smaller distance than the corner. Okay, that's a pointless explanation, but explaining what is obvious already.
bene tutti i vettori.
So which mass we are talking about, because I know really well all the Iranian rockets, and they will have very big troubles in bringing transporting something that is above 200 kilograms. This will weigh way more than 200 kilograms. Remember that the first bombs were dropped by planes, and something that maybe doesn't sound very obvious, but planes can transport much higher mass respect to rockets. Now we are talking about Iranian rockets that they cannot bring more than 200 kilograms of payload, but for example the Bomber B2 can drop the bomb that is the MOP that is 12 or 14 tons, so 14,000 kilograms. So airplanes can drop a much heavier bomb, like they did for dropping on Japan, but of course are much easier to intercept, especially with very advanced air force and air defense that Israel has.
Intanto perché, ripeto, con il damper abbassi.
So with the damper, you will reduce a little bit the critical mass, but having to use a cylindrical symmetry, this will increase your critical mass. And also the critical mass is function of the density,
non comprime
and this design doesn't really compress the uranium,
comprime il fissile.
so it doesn't.
Resta ancora piuttosto alta,
So your critical mass remains pretty high,
dell'ordine delle decine
in the order of tens of kilograms only of core. 10 kilograms.
a cui devi aggiungere il
Tens.
damper, che è la parte che
At which you have to add the damper, that is the part that avoids the... When these things start fissioning, it
ok?
turns on. Heats up. So heating up will expand. So expanding will become again below critical. So it will turn off by itself.
Quindi tu devi mettergli una
So you need to put a structure around it, very rigid,
forte attorno,
very strong, that will keep it compressed. So you generally use impoverished uranium, so uranium 238, or tungsten carbide.
e quindi il damper è la parte più pesante.
And the damper is the heaviest part. So what I was saying is partially incorrect. So basically when I show my god, I hate this thing, that this has to be stronger, it is so it actually prevent this to expand until it actually get into the full nuclear expansion, because it will start expanding due to heat, but you want to keep it compressed still a little bit, so it's then go to full fission. Of course, probably both of the things are true.
Cui, come dici tu, è molto difficile stare sotto quei famosi due.
L'unica sarebbe un vettore
So it's very difficult to stay below these 200 kilograms.
aereo, ma loro non hanno la capacità
The only thing is using an aerial vector, so a plane,
di arrivare.
but they don't have the capability to get to Israel with that plane.
L'intelligence americana ritiene
So
che
the American intelligence
perseguendo
thinks that Iran is trying to pursue this type of simple design that is simple and rougher but easier to achieve,
per arrivare a dichiarare
to get to be able to make a test, a nuclear test,
dichiarano noi adesso
where they declare we are a nuclear power, and at that point
mi verrebbe da dire di marketing geopolitico,
he says a geopolitical marketing move,
ok? Perché ripeto,
because this bomb will,
essendo una bomba
while being an actual atomic bomb, they will not be able to put in an adequate delivery system.
l'altra possibilità, l'innesco
The other possibility is oh my god, it's just 8 minutes into the videos. Oh my god, it's going to be super long. The other possibility is the implosion device that is been the bomb of the Los Alamos bomb, so the first tested one, the Trinity test, and also Fat Man, so the one on Nagasaki,
quello che oggi è più utilizzato,
and also the one that is the most commonly used.
nettamente superiore, ok?
The implosion trigger is clearly superior
Per tutta una serie di
for a serious reason of first of all, the implosion device will compress the material. Okay, let's make again this another drawing. Let's make this live extremely long. I will never finish it. So the implosion device works in this way. This time uranium is a sphere, okay? This is a sphere of uranium, and it will be surrounded by another fucking artist. Okay. Boom, boom, boom. This looks pretty horrible. Then this thing is surrounded by the scale is not realistic probably, but this is the concept. So you have this is uranium. This is uranium and is surrounded by this conventional explosive. So when this explodes, will generate a shock wave in this direction that will compress the uranium and increase its mass. So increase its density because it gets compressed, so will reduce its critical mass, and so it will compress it until it collapses and generates actually the fission.
La massa critica anche con quantità
So you can, as he's saying, you can achieve the critical mass even with
inferiori.
much lower amount of uranium.
16 kg, forse anche un po' meno per
We are talking about 16 kilograms, maybe even less
l'uranio 235
for uranium-235,
e addirittura solo 7 kg.
and only 7 kilograms for plutonium-239. So plutonium is, of course, as I described before, difference with plutonium is that, of course, we'll have more protons. You can see here. Plutonium will have more protons, and the overall mass will be one more than 238, so 239. So that's just another molecules that can use, other atoms that can be used for this.
Questo ovviamente è già un grosso vantaggio.
So I already forgot the critical mass of 70 kilograms for uranium with the, I don't remember. But yeah, so it's said 16 kilograms for the implosion of uranium at 90%. 90% didn't specify that maybe. And for plutonium 7 kilograms.
Secondo vantaggio è molto
Plutonium is obtained by some fission reaction. So it's not a natural element, so it's not extracted, but it can be obtained from reactors that are specifically made for that. There are also the Chernobyl reactor, for example, where it was able to generate plutonium from while also generating energy.
molto meno rischiosa, in nessun caso
So this trigger is much less risky because in no case you risk the accidental detonation. It's called it pre-detonation, because you have a series of explosive, a shell of explosive that surrounds the core, conventional explosive, and these have to detonate in a perfectly synchronous way to generate a shockwave that goes inside with a perfectly spherical shape, and this wave compresses the core that goes into critical. But that means that if the rocket is hit with something and causes one of the explosives to detonate, the explosive shell, the shockwave is asymmetrical and will cause at the deformation of the core, but not a detonation. So it's much safer respect to accidental detonation. This will make it also lighter and mountable on a hypersonic vector. So explaining about the safety. So this is my perfectly amazing representation here. Of course, that means that you will need to have these perfectly spherical, this is not perfectly spherical shockwave to compress it. But if you have, so they trigger all at the same time, and we'll see later that there is actually also some way to do the explosive. It's tricky to make the explosive shell to behave in this way. But let's say there is something that hits here. So you have a big rocket or an object that hits here and causes the detonation of part of the shell. The shockwave will come from here, and in any case will not synchronize. Even if it goes trigger of all the shell, it will not be synchronous enough because they need to be perfectly synchronous. It needs to be perfectly accurate. So we'll have will not have a perfectly spherical shape. So it'll just explode, but will not detonate to a nuclear level because it doesn't get the perfect spherical shape we want. Sounds like a very strange drawing. Looks like a very strange drawing. But what is the issue? This type of design is much more complex because besides requiring more advanced electronics, because you need, we are talking about asynchrony of the detonation of the explosive must be precise to the millionth of second, because the nuclear reaction goes in those times. So in about 15 milliseconds, the system goes from 0 to thousands of degrees, and in about half a second get to 10 million degrees and detonate. So everything happens in a very small amount of time. So you need a precision electronic, and you need also explosive lenses, because it's not enough to have the shell that is perfectly spherical as the sewing of the football ball. Stitches. Also, the shock wave that is propagating inward must have a perfectly spherical shape. So you need materials that stratified, that give a shape to the shock wave, the shape that you want to the shock wave. So you have the shock wave that propagates through this material, but doesn't propagate at the same speed in all directions. So in the perpendicular direction moves slower, while in the transversal direction propagates faster, in a way that reaches the core at exactly in the same instant. So again, so this is my understanding of this, because it's something that I don't really know. Okay, so basically you will have a trigger. You cannot have a continuous trigger. You will have, like say, a trigger here, a trigger here, a trigger here, trigger here, trigger here, and so on. So when you activate this thing, it will generate a shockwave that normally will be like this. The activation, the firing will propagate in this way. Same from here. But you can understand that this is not a perfect sphere, because here comes later. It's not really a perfect sphere. So what you want to do, because in this way, this representation, it propagates at the same speed in every direction. How it is normal, like you throw a pebble in the water, it will propagate, the wave will propagate in the same speed in all directions. Now with certain type of materials, you can get that this one propagates faster, and in this direction this direction propagates faster, while in this direction propagates slower. So you will have something like this. It will propagate in this way. Okay, it's getting this part gets fast forward very quickly, and this part instead gets forward slower. This is also very quickly. So it starts changing the shape. So if you do if you keep going on, then we'll take this shape. It will get concave. And if you do this for every other one, you will get at the end a perfectly spherical shape. I'm so good. I'm such a good artist, yes. So they're very, and so those are the explosive lenses. This is my understanding, especially in this part is I have less knowledge about these explosive lenses, but this is my understanding. So those are difficult to design and difficult to build. During the Manhattan project, to design the explosive lenses, they put John von Neumann. That was the it's still today estimated to be the highest IQ in the 1900s. So to get to this actually type of device that is more sophisticated, the implosion device, even after fabricating the core, they would need 1-2 years. First of all, recap something. I think that Fat Man was still 4 tons of a device, so even with an implosive trigger might not be that easy to get something light, but I'm not sure about that. And now he's saying, okay, they will need to get 1-2 years to actually fabricate these explosive lenses, so this type of design. So even if now they reach, if they can reach now a sufficient enrichment level to get actually a working device with this type, to get a weapon that is actually effective and not just for show, they will need more time. So in this case, 1-2 years at least. I would say that technically they could have already done this. They say that they have no evidence that they've done this, the explosive lenses. They could have done it, or they could have someone in the future that gives them the explosive lenses. Some allies. It's unlikely, but could happen in certain conditions. I think happened for North Korea, but I'm not sure. But yes, these the concern is legitimate. They say they didn't find any evidence, but also the Agency for Nuclear Energy, it's used to look at enrichment, can look at uranium enrichment and so on, because it's very easy to find traces of enriched uranium radiation. It's very easy to find traces like that, but it's much harder to find if they actually made explosive lenses, because it's much more specific and much harder to detect.
Per quanto riguarda il programma di arricchimento dell'uranio, gli ordigni al plutonio funzionano in maniera simile.
So plutonium devices work in a similar way, but
l'ordigno al plutonio praticamente funziona solo con innesco a implosione.
But the plutonium device works basically only with the implosion trigger. And but plutonium, as I said before, it needs requires a smaller mass to work, and plutonium must be produced. So uranium is enriched, so you get the uranium from the mine and then you enrich the percentage of 235 uranium that you have inside it, while plutonium must be produced in a reactor. And there is no evidence at the moment, it says, that they are producing plutonium. They have no evidence that Iran has stockpiles of weapon-grade plutonium. Today got out, was published this tweet that is pretty ridiculous, that in Natanz they found alpha contamination in Natanz. There could be plutonium, but it's something stupid, because In Natanz they enrich uranium. Uranium is an alpha emitter, so it's normal that if there is contamination, it will be for sure alpha contamination. It doesn't mean that it contains plutonium. So it's saying, yes, they found alpha contamination, but that's alpha probably produced by uranium it's known that they are doing that, and not by plutonium that maybe they're doing that. And I say on Twitter that it's like if you go on, it's called, how do I translate this? Riding school, seriously? Okay, they say riding school, like if you go into a riding school, you find some horns, and you say they are horses, but they could also be zebras. Yes, technically they can be zebras, but very likely they are horses. Because you're... So, again, it seems apparently they found these traces, but not sure. But in any case, they would be uranium. IAEA. Why do the International Atomic Energy Association give these ambiguous messages? In a moment where there are some politicians that are searching for a casus belli. And you're going to serve them something like this? If you don't have the absolute certainty, you should not send certain messages. But the association didn't give that message. The tweet was from this is not even a communication, was IAEA as the association has some active measurement system active in Iran, system that have been partially but not totally disabled by the Iranian. Reason why the association denounced officially Iran, made a resolution, approved a resolution against Iran last week, 5 days ago, that Israel used to justify the attack, defining it a preventive attack. The association has a monitoring system that are partially active, and this device detected the alpha contamination. The sentence might be compatible with plutonium wasn't said by the association, it was said by someone later. And it was a user on Twitter that said something like that. And it's a sentence that is technically true, but it's like saying that the horse's legs are, the horse's feet are compatible with zebras. It's true, but there are likely no zebras here. If Iran had accumulated plutonium, weapon-grade plutonium, if they did it, they would have not done it at Natanz. Because remember, Natanz is where they have centrifuges, so well they enrich uranium. Because Natanz is a center for uranium enrichment centrifuges. I'm thinking I might be mispronouncing it. Sorry a second. Centrifuge.
della produzione del plutonio.
È l'unica base che non è stata colpita.
E qua arriviamo a Natanz, perché Natanz è un sito con le centrifughe per l'arricchimento dell'uranio.
So,
E qua
guys,
arriviamo al tema
Nathan,
della produzione
we
del
will
plutonio.
È l'unica base che non è stata colpita. Quella sottoterra nella montagna è quella dove teoricamente dovrebbero fare. Il resto sono centrifughe praticamente.
E anche quella sotto la montagna sono centrifughi.
So again, a little bit confusion here. Also, the other bases under the mountain is centrifuges.
Però invece è stato
Centrifuges.
costruito un
That has been
reattore
hit a reactor.
è un
I
potenziale
think
utilizzato per la
that is a potential reactor potentially used for plutonium.
però
But
non vuol dire, cioè, al momento non ci sono
there is no evidence at the moment that has been used in that way.
prendere anche il nome del reattore.
E per quanto riguarda invece gli aiuti russi, perché un po' di anni fa, durante
What about the Russian helps?
Arak,
Arak. Arak is the name of the reactor.
reattore di Arak,
Arak.
che è un reattore
That is a reactor at low burnup
non per la
burnout
produzione di energia elettrica,
that is not used for electrical energy
a
production.
basso burn-up ad acqua pesante,
It's a low burnup reactor at heavy water
che può essere
that can be
utilizzato
used
per la produzione di plutonio,
to produce plutonium,
però può anche essere
but also could be used
per la produzione
for research and to produce radio pharmaceuticals.
di farmaci. Quindi, ripeto,
So,
mentre sulla produzione di uranio arricchito
while on uranium enriched production, enriched uranium, there are evidence. So there are evidence that Iran was following that road. So there is evidence that Iran had 60% enriched uranium to make a bomb, because the only thing you can do with 60% uranium is to go towards a bomb. You don't need for civilian use.
produzione di plutonio
On the plutonium production, instead, there is no evidence, because this reactor that could be used is it could be used also for civilian purposes.
non si può escludere,
It cannot be excluded.
non escluderlo, ma non
He says that he tends to not exclude it,
non significa, cioè, per il momento
but
insomma,
it doesn't mean for the moment is not proved.
allora
You can see that there is a lot of uncertainty in all of this.
la produzione di plutonio, ripeto, si fa
You have high uncertainty and very high stake in this game.
in dei reattori a basso burn-up. Il burn-up è il
So the production of plutonium is done in this reactor at these low burn-up reactors.
conversione tra
Burn-up is
l'energia.
the conversion rate between heavy metal and energy.
Per produrre plutonio,
To produce plutonium, you want
sia basso.
that conversion rate is low, because you want
Ma a parte quello,
it critical.
della roba
You want it critical, but you want to fissionate a small amount of the atoms.
più possibile invece a
And-
temperature neutroniche che
And the most possible is a neutron capture
mutano
that transmute uranium 138 in plutonium.
e poi vai a separare questo plutonio chimicamente.
And then you separate this plutonium chemically.
Cosa non è possibile.
So again, let's go back to the description. So we said we have this amazing representation of uranium, and we said that if you send against them a neutron that impacts this thing, terrible annoying. Okay, you have a neutron that goes here and impacts these atoms. The objective is that it destroys these and creates smaller. Okay, of course, as you can see, these are not 200 particles, but I cannot draw all of 200 particles, whatever. This fissionates and generates, this fission and generates other neutrons that will go to hit other atoms, and this will also generate a lot of energy. Now, what you want to do here instead is that you have this atom and this neutron that goes towards this atom, but instead of completely destroying it, you want it to get basically stuck into this thing. So you will have that this atom that is, in this case, 238, actually, if it's 235, normally fissionate, but depending also on the neutron speed and whatever, if it's 238, you can get plutonium again. Same thing here, but with one more atom. So, oh no, wrong color. What? And this neutron will become a proton, because remember, if you change the amount of I hate this thing so much. Yeah, okay, whatever. Because if you add a neutron, you will just get another isotope of uranium, so uranium-239. But at the point is a reaction happens and converts a neutron into a proton. I don't remember energy where it goes and whatever. Basically, at this point, you have this thing that is plutonium. 239. So in one case, you want to destroy the atom to generate energy. In the other case, so you want both. In case you want to make a bomb or make energy for a nuclear power plant, you want to destroy the atom to generate energy. But in this case, instead to create plutonium, you want it to absorb a neutron to generate fuel. So this is a reaction that is not possible to do in civilian reactors, not anymore. There were dual-use reactors, the RBMK, i Magnox, but today EPVR are not capable of doing this thing because they are at high burn-up. So remember, the RBMK was the one for Chernobyl that's also made the design very unstable, so it's not used anymore. And what he's saying now is that nowadays reactors have very high burn-up because they want to generate a lot of energy efficiently, so they generate less residuals, but in this case the residuals is what you want. You don't want the energy, you want the plutonium.
Guarda, proprio 16 minuti fa sono uscite le immagini.
60 minutes ago came satellite images for the Harak site that has not been hit. It's not been hit. There is no evidence of attacks. There is no evidence of Israeli attacks. It's interesting that we are talking about satellite image and we are doing the damage assessment.
Sì, questo contraddice evidentemente la
I saying that at the base there are just 2 entry points and the rest of the base is underground. This contradicts the official declaration of Clash Reports that says that the Arak has been hit. But notice the tweet, it says, for the fuel enrichment plant, that should be this one, that is the one under the mountain, and the other one that was shown before, this one instead should be Harak, I guess. That also, there is something here? I don't know, it's just a shadow. Also doesn't seem hit. Remember, this video is from Saturday, and Harak was hit later in the week, during the week. At least I'm pretty sure it was hit at some point.
La dichiarazione ufficiale di Clash Report che dice che invece il complesso di Harak è stato colpito, quindi prendo atto, nel senso io non ho riscontri come i tuoi, quindi evidentemente invece non è stato colpito. Ad ogni modo, ripeto, se
So Clash reports that has been hit Arak, but the images shows that apparently it's not been hit. Oh, it's not clear. But as I said, it will be hit later.
Iran produce plutonio weapon grade.
If Iran, at least according to the news, if Iran produces plutonium, weapon grade plutonium, they do in this site, so Arak. I have no news that they have other reactors, low burn up reactor that are able to do that. And they are definitely not doing it in Natanz. They are not doing it in the other reactor. Should be Fordo. And they're also not doing it in the other center. That is called Fordo. I think Fordo, sometimes Fordo, whatever.
Sì, è Fordo.
Quindi la produzione di uranio arricchito avviene a Natanz e a Fordo.
The enriched uranium production gets in Natanz and Fordo. That is the most gives the most worrying because there is direct evidence of weapon grade enrichment of uranium.
Invece per quanto riguarda
instead regarding there is also Isfahan that is okay, just to show here, this is Tehran, that is the capital. I hope you can see it. This is Fordo, just below Tehran, that is the one in the mountain. That is they're talking about this week because it's about 60 meters underground, and only the American bomb MOP can hit it, and Israel doesn't have the weapon to hit it. Then there is Natanz, that is another centrifuge plant, so for enrichment. Fordo and Natanz for uranium enrichment, and but this is not too much underground. And I think they were at the beginning they attacked it only superficially, but at some point I think during this week we're able to go deeper below. This is Isfahan that he's talking about now. This is Bushehr, that is a civilian nuclear energy reaction, nuclear energy plant that is not being attacked. This is Arak, that is the one we were talking to possibly produce plutonium. And then there are the other less relevant sites. So yeah, okay, in Isfahan he said that there should not be a reactor, but there is the recon conversion structure. Remember we said you take the uranium, actually it is uranium oxide from the mine, I think, you convert into uranium hexafluoride, that is a gas. You make the uranium enrichment with a centrifuge, and then you need to convert it back into solid uranium. And this in Isfahan they're doing exactly this: take the gas and convert it into metal. And so they make actually the fissile. So this explain again what I explained now.
E quello dovrebbe essere quello che fanno a Isfahan. E poi appunto ci sono Fordo e Natanz che sono siti di arricchimento, c'è Arak che è un reattore, diciamo, di ricerca / produzione di plutonio, non lo sappiamo, mentre Bushehr è una centrale nucleare civile che monta un reattore.
So Bushehr, as I was saying, that is the one in the south, is a civilian central
una centrale nucleare civile
that has a BVR 1000 Russian, and that is a totally civilian structure that in fact is not been attacked by the Israeli because it doesn't get warnings. So I wanted to ask about the Russians. Since after 6-7 months about the war, after the start of the war in Ukraine, there was news that there were images actually that some planes landed and some character that for maybe fame, you know, a certain name,
Conoscessi dei personaggi che forse per fama conosci, un certo
Vyacheslav Danilenko,
ha lavorato al
that
programma fisico
that worked on the physical nuclear program
iraniano nei primi
Iranian of Iran
anni
at the beginning of the 2000s and have been brought back,
del fatto che fosse un esperto in
and they talked about it was an expert in nanodiamonds and nanoparticles, and there was the idea to use nanoparticles for the explosive detonation.
negato qualsiasi coinvolgimento.
Russia negates any involvement.
Guarda caso, subito dopo sono
They were not there, blah blah blah. But at the end, just immediately after a small amount of time, arrived the Shahid in Russian, that then became the Jayran. So what he's saying is that Iran gave the Shahid drones, that are some very cheap drones, like $10,000s per drone, that are drones that goes and hit buildings and explode, some very basic drones. And the Russia got it and is using now to bomb Ukraine. At least a variant they developed from that, because they started getting first from Iran, then they started having their homemade production, and he's speculating that they got some help from a nuclear bomb from Russia in exchange of this help. Could the Russian give an acceleration to Iran nuclear program? There has been something that has been kept under control, because we know that the relation between Russia, Israel and Iran are pretty embarrassing, because Israel had a good relation with Russia for regarding Syria, but then they decided to take the even more of the Golan Heights when everything started to collapse. And then Israel doesn't see very well a Russian support for the Iranian plans for the nuclear bomb. Oh my god,
Allora, io devo darti la risposta sincera è non lo so.
The honest answer is I don't know, in the sense that it's possible,
Anzi, io direi forse anche
is maybe also likely that there have been Russian help for the military nuclear development, but also civilian nuclear development, because the Bushehr Central and as a Russian reactor, there are other 2 reactors that are being built, another 2 also planned. So at the end, they should have, when completed, 5 operative reactors. The point is that the Russian assistance can help up to a certain point, in the sense that actually the fabrication time of explosive lenses and implosion cores are those. Even the Manhattan project, they took more than 1 year to build the implosion devices. I would say the Manhattan project was really old, so maybe today in theory could be faster. That's not really, I don't think it's a good argument, this one. So besides, unless Russia gives them rockets already built, I guess actually a warhead, already a rocket's already equipped with a nuclear warhead to Iran, there will not be, there is way for Iran to have a nuclear warhead modern and efficient and armed and on hypersonic missile before 1 year or 2. Even having the core ready in 2 weeks. This is my personal analysis respect to all of the reports from the association and my knowledge on how nuclear weapons works.
Potrebbe avere invece nel giro
Could potentially instead, in the time of about 2-3 months, a weapon that is raw and
un ordigno più rozzo con un innesco gun type che difficilmente
that with a gun type trigger that hardly can be mounted on a delivery system that is adequate, but could give Iran the status of nuclear power that could be used for deterrence, whatever want, a little bit like the North Korea.
A proposito
Mm,
di Corea
North
del
Korea.
Nord, perché in queste ore stiamo
Talking about North Korea, because in these hours it's coming a lot of this lot of news. North Korea said that they will assist Iran. A lot suspect that that is that type of assistance, so nuclear weapon. So he doesn't doubt it because there is now an axis: North Korea, Iran, Russia, with China that is, let's say, is there but pretending to not be there.
Allora, la Corea del Nord, a differenza dell'Iran,
North Korea, differently from Iran, we know they have plutonium. So North Korea has plutonium because they also have a reactor, union, low burn up heavy water reactor for the plutonium production, and we know that they also by the type of detonation can be verified. North Korea did some tests, and so we could also make some detection on the fission products. We know that North Korea has enough plutonium. They actually have nuclear weapons, plutonium nuclear weapons, with implosion trigger. But they took years to do that. From the moment that you have the plutonium cores to the moment when you make the nuclear test, 3 years passed for North Korea. Look that this is not that much time, even if he's saying that is a lot of time, is not that much time. So again, or either North Korea gives the Enteridon weapons directly to Iran, but it's also not clear how they can make it arrive there, or the assistance that they can give cannot help Iranian plans too much. But even that cannot help. Besides that, cannot help Iran to go much faster. But also North Korea has the same issue because it has the bomb, but doesn't have an adequate delivery system that can hit very far away. It's true that South Korea is very close, but besides that, they cannot really do much. So the same things is valid for Iran. Israel instead the atomic weapons has the atomic weapons. We know they have it. Officially they don't have it. But yes, we say there are enough evidence. Besides, Israel doesn't adhere to the not proliferation treaties, so is not subject to this type of independent controls of the International Atomic Energy Agency. They let them enter, so inspectors can enter in Israel, but only with a warning, so they can show and hide whatever they want. Israel show and this thing is legal because Israel didn't adhere to the non-proliferation treaty, and Israel doesn't have civilian plants. If Israel ever wanted to build a civilian power plant, their non-adherence to the non-proliferation treaties will create him certain problems.
Non lo fanno per questioni di sicurezza.
So what he's saying is that Israel has nuclear weapons. It can have technically nuclear weapons because it doesn't adhere to non-proliferation treaties. That is the treaty that is supposed to avoid that every country start getting nuclear weapons. But as a side effect of this, they cannot build a civilian nuclear reactor because they will not get the support from the international community, because the international community will shut them the supply for them to this material, because of course they don't adhere to the treaty. So he's saying that Israel doesn't do that for security reason, because they consider it a too vulnerable target. But also, we don't talk a lot about it, but Israel is one of the few countries that has the triad. So remember, the triad is the that has submarines, Dolphin class submarines that sends the nuclear rockets, as the Jericho that they can throw them from the send them from the F-16, and I think even from land. And they don't talk about Israel having a triad. So the triad is having being able to deliver nuclear weapons with planes, strategic bombers, intercontinental ballistic missiles, and submarines. So it's a ponderate choice because they consider it a risk. Too strong risk to attack, let's say. If they ever wanted to change idea on this, they anyway, until they don't sign the non-proliferation treaty and they don't start getting the special monitoring from the IAEA, they will not be able to create civilian structure, if not with the extremely high difficulty, because the logistic assistance and the cooperation, international cooperation wanted by the association are fundamental to start a civilian program. In fact, Pakistan, that had its own military nuclear program, when recently decides to expand this civilian program, building civilian reactors, besides actually is still not adhering to the non-proliferation treaties, Pakistan has accepted a certain type, an advanced surveillance from the association and give access to all its infrastructure to the inspectors. These allowed him to, okay, so the association said, you let us enter, you make us see all that you do, we help you to push the civilian program. That is the thing that Pakistan is doing. It sounds a little bit unfair because they can have both the nuke but not being sanctioned for that. This is something like that. From the side of Pakistan, doesn't result attempt of nuclear proliferation while they are developing the civilian program. So I would say that they have already their nukes, but they are not trying to get more. Israel, we know that has atomic warhead. The estimation goes between the 200 and 400. And the most relevant thing, according to me, is that between 40 and 80 are not atomic bombs, but are thermonuclear bombs. So H-bomb, hydrogen bomb, with fission core, and deuterium-lithium chamber that starts the fusion, and so double effect. So very quickly going back to the drawing. So this is the employee, like, let's make maybe something smaller. So here you have your implosion device. Make it smaller. Let's make it smaller. It's not. God damn it. Okay. So, and this is the device, and you put it into this warhead. This is completely not to scale. But in the case of the fusion bomb, they have another chamber here. Should be of this shape if I'm not wrong. And here you have deuterium and lithium. So deuterium is so, you know, hydrogen has just one proton. Hydrogen is just one proton and one electron. And this is hydrogen. If you add one neutron, and this is stable, if you add one neutron, you need something that is also stable, and this is deuterium. And lithium instead has, I think, three protons, and should have, normally in a stable form, you should have 3 neutrons, but I think they're using another isotope that has less neutrons, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So here you have deuterium and lithium. So when, of course, you will have the detonation, all this stuff that explodes, this thing explodes in this direction, compress this ball then explodes extremely intense with an atomic explosion, and then hits this thing and will cause another explosion that is a nuclear fusion. Oh my god, I was covering it, but okay, it was just a square. Fine.
Quindi, dal tuo punto di
So,
vista,
according to your point of view, probably Iran doesn't yet have the capability, at least not in the emphasis that Netanyahu is claiming. From what I'm understanding is that the decision to do now this type of attack is because part of their operation, their underground operation that we have seen in act, so that we have seen that ATGM and drones, not really with the Mossad operative, but probably with some Iranian that are helping the Israeli in a resistant movement. Part of these have been found 2 weeks ago. This is coming now. Again, this is news. This episode is from Saturday. They arrested a certain amount in these days of the Iranian. So it's possible this operation was being uncovered, so it was the time to operate. So it's referring, remember that some also remembering the Ukrainian operation. So Ukraine sent similar to the Ukraine operation. What they did was to bring some drones inside of Iran. Apparently, they have factories inside of Iran to produce these drones, and then they used these drones they produced inside of Iran to attack these facilities, reducing a lot the reaction time that they had, while at the same time they also attacked with the F-35 4th generation planes too, and all this stuff. Yes. So this thing that was undercover then was discovered a couple of weeks ago, so they decided to start the operation. So it was needed a big reason to casus belli to justify this intervention. So this message is the thing that justifies this thing.
l'Iran è ancora molto
But probably Iran is still far away from
solo da
this,
sviluppare, ma poi da trovare un vettore adatto
from developing it, but also to find an adapt vector.
il tasso di intercettazione israeliano.
And also seeing the interception rate of Israel, you would need to have a lot of those bombs to be able to hit.
Abbiamo visto che
Besides, even with the saturation, we have seen that Tel Aviv got some relevant damages. We have seen in these damages this night and this morning. Remember, this video is from Saturday afternoon.
ciò che è stato lanciato
Anyway, in the total amount of what have been sent, about 90% has been intercepted.
un ordigno nucleare sono solo vettori.
So you cannot have a single nuclear weapon on a single vector, because at that point you will have all the anti-aircraft, the air defense, the Israeli air defense concentrated on this device, unless you have an hypersonic that grants you. And even that we have seen that some exoatmospheric interception. So the Israeli can even back you very, very high before you can arrive.
Dovrebbero sviluppare tanti.
So they will have to develop a lot of them. Again, they could maybe send a lot of rockets, just few of them having the bomb, and Israeli will not be able to know which one has it. But that's pretty much a gamble. And yeah, let's go.
Non ne abbia nemmeno uno.
Sì, sono d'accordo.
And
Tanti. E al
Sì,
momento
sono-
pare
at the moment, I don't have even one bomb.
D'accordo, nel senso,
Yes, I agree, in the sense that
io sul discorso
on the discourse,
mi esprimo
I will not express myself on the political discourse. I don't want
pretestuoso.
to discuss the motivation.
che
So he wants just to do a technical analysis. But the idea that Iran could have a bomb ready to drop on Israel tomorrow is not real. Israel could have enough capability to build a weapon for show or something like that in a few months.
18 mesi, 2 anni,
But before 18 months, 2 years, they will not be able to have
un ordigno
a deliverable weapon,
efficiente e moderno.
efficient and modern weapon, so implosion device that requires advanced electronics. That is a problem also for the Russian in the moment.
Le lenti esplosive
It requires explosive lenses.
sono dei polimeri molto
That requires
complessi, cioè non è una roba
materially some also complex polymers. It's not something easy,
anche con
because even the best technologies of the world, because it requires to assemble artificially certain polymers, particular that will behave in under certain condition as a non-Newtonian fluid, so the pressure wave that traverses them in one direction gets.
cioè io faccio esplodere una cosa qua, l'onda che va in
This is what I described before.
l'onda che va nelle altre direzioni va più lenta,
So
arrivano
the
tutte contemporaneamente,
explosive lenses I described before. So let's not repeat it again.
perpendicolare va più lenta, l'onda
So
trasversale
he's
va più
saying
veloce, quindi arrivano alla shell centrale tutto nello stesso momento. Ok? È difficile, quindi per questa roba qua ci vorrebbe tempo.
So remember this thing that I described before.
E anche con l'assistenza
And even with the Russian assistance or North Korean,
non si può
that time will be reduced up to a certain point.
18 mesi, 2
I'm talking about a delta of 18 months or 2 years.
questo prevederebbe
It will be easier for them to get something already done.
Russia voglia regalare
But that doesn't mean that would mean that Russia wants to give an atomic bomb. That would be a pretty strange precedence, also never seen before.
Ecco, secondo te questa cosa innescherebbe una reazione ancora più
Also, yes, according to you, this thing would cause an even more violent reaction from Iran,
l'idea di
because at the end the Netanyahu idea is that we don't care if they have it now, we care if they can get it from 1 year, 2 or 3. For them the point is that they are trying to get it. and the point for them is that they're working on it and they want to intervene in a preventive way. So if they got a weapons, a device, even given by North Korea, probably everything will stop, or there will be an acceleration. This is the point, because this is a question. This is a $1 million question. From one side, it could create a deterrence. From the other, they could be induce a reaction that is even more violent in the moment. Israel says they have weapons, or 10 weapons. They are not enough to penetrate our defense, but if they get to 30, 40, 100, at that point we get the risk of seeing Tel Aviv nuclearized. So at that point there will be an even stronger response. I don't want to say a nuclear preventive nuclear strike. I don't think Iran will do that. It's not in the Western doctrine, but a response at that point that we see an open war and possibly the American entrance in the war. This is a very wide speculation. So I want to stress at this point, this is very important. People are speculating too much about this point, about if they could get the weapons immediately, if they were close to it. Someone says, Israel is saying that they already had it. It is not what is happening. But the point is, you are certified that they are trying to get it. So this country, not the country, but the leadership of this country wants to destroy Israel. They said it multiple times. This is their objective. Okay? And they are creating a bomb that could help them in doing that. Not only the worrying part is not only that they would be able to get this weapon, that they will be able to use this weapon on Israel and destroy and create colossal damage to Israel. But the risk is that they get the weapon, maybe they don't use it over Israel, but it will not be possible for Israel to intervene against Iran to damage them. And that's an issue because Iran could continuously attack Israel with its proxies. So, the 3 H's from in Lebanon, Palestine, and Yemen. Trying to not say the name. But yes, so that it would be harder for Israel to weaken Iran, because at that point, when they have the nuke, you cannot do anything to them because they could reply with the nuke. So they create a situation that is very risky. And this country that also attacked you, remember, we had last year in 2024, in April and October, 2 missile strikes with hundreds of rockets from Iran directly on Israel. And also Iran is the one giving weapons and support to all the groups that are attacking Israel from Lebanon, from Palestine, and from Yemen. And also they are also in Syria and Iraq and blah blah. So they have attacked Israel multiple times. They want to destroy them. They know that they want to create a nuke. So they know that they want to prevent it. They want to intervene. Now, you're not going to do this once you decided that you want to do that. You're not going to do that when they are very close to getting it. Because at that point, first of all, there is an estimation error. So maybe you thought that they needed just 2 weeks, but they actually needed less and they get the bomb and you're fucked. Or you might be busy. You might be busy because maybe you're fighting another war. Maybe the situation is complex because they have strong allies. Maybe the geopolitical situation doesn't allow you to attack them. So you will be, for example, let's say they are in a war with Egypt. At that point, if Iran is 2 weeks before making a nuke, they cannot stop them because they have to focus on Egypt. They cannot open another front with Iran. So you want, let's say when you decide that you want to buy a television, you don't buy the television immediately unless it's urgent. You don't buy it too late. You will buy it when there is, Black Friday, when there is a discount. The moment there is a discount, you're like, oh, this is the time, this is the moment. Maybe it's not the best moment for me to do that. I would not want to do it now, but now is the offer. Now is the opportunity. It will not be open for everything. And now the situation is this, that Iran has had a lot of proxies. They defeated them. They are still fighting in Palestine, but they are much weaker than before. In Lebanon, they basically destroyed them, and they also declared themselves out of the war. So this other proxy is out of the war. The one in Yemen, they didn't are not defeated, but the damage they can do is mostly limited. And in any case, they're already in the war, so there is no risk of them also joining the war because they are already in the war with Israel. And so Iran is left alone. Russia is very tired. It's very struggling a lot in Ukraine, so they cannot intervene too much. So this is the moment for attacking Iran alone. And maybe there is also an administration in the US that is pretty fine with that. It's not clear from Trump messaging if they were fine, they were not. They kept bouncing back and forth. But overall, they are not. They don't seem super upset that Israel is doing that. And remember, Trump, since the first administration, listed Iran as an enemy much more than, for example, Russia. So it's not really against this Trump, probably. So this is really the opportunity now. So since they want to do this at some point, everyone agrees that this is reasonable to do that at some point. It's better to do now. That is the opportunity, and not wait for the last second as everyone does, and then you don't have time in the last second.
Perché si dice bomba sporca rispetto
Allora,
alla...
una bomba sporca è un concetto.
So now they're talking about dirty bomb.
Tra l'altro sulle bombe sporche
It's a completely different concept, a dirty bomb. And on the dirty bomb, I'm making, he says that he's making the PhD project. So a dirty bomb is a device that has a conventional explosive that is paired with a shell or some a certain amount. Then depends how rough is this. And there is this shell and this other part of radioactive material that gets dispersed by the explosion. So besides having the immediate destructive effect due to the conventional explosive, you also have some contamination of an area. So there are several experts that consider that the true strength of a dirty bomb is psychological, so it's creating a devastating panic. So for a dirty bomb, the uranium is not indicated for this weapon, because Iran could have a stockpile of dirty bombs, but definitely they are completely not related with the Natanz and neither with the other sites, because the dirty bomb, you don't do it with uranium and plutonium that are elements with long half-life, because they have a too long half-life, because they have specific activity to activity. So they don't contaminate enough. So I will explain this. Can I clear this stuff? No, I cannot go anymore. Can I get the bucket? Can I get the bucket? Oh no, what have I done? Okay, never mind. Let's take a file. Open. Okay, now let's do something stupid. Where is the brushes? Big brush. Fuck. I'm so stupid. This is so ugly to work. Let's clear everything. Okay. go back. So when you have these, as I said, you have these atoms that has some protons and some neutrons. Now, the more neutrons, the amount of neutrons can give different instabilities. When it gets unstable, that means that might spontaneously collapse. So you have this atom that is minding its business at some point, without any bomb, without any neutron arriving, it just decides to explode. So this thing explodes, and let's say this part separates. It releases, for example, this is an alpha ray. It's an helium nuclei. So this detaches. And this is radioactivity. So you have billions of atoms in an object, and when these atoms, some of these atoms decides to explode, they release this radioactivity. Now you have to understand that if these atoms do this periodically, in particularly the reaction is they have a period that is said half-life. An half-life of 2 years means that in 2 years 50% of the atoms that are in an object will explode. So if you have let's say stupid representation, you have this block. In 2 years, if the half-life is 2, all this part will react, and this part will be still able to radiate. Then after other 2 years, this other half will explode. This other half after, so 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, then we have 8 years, and so on. You can see that this gets smaller and smaller with time. So there is the amount of reactive material, radiating material gets lower and lower. But so you can see that the amount of fissile material, reactive material, gets lower and lower. Of course, this is just a representation, but when the material actually decays, it's all over the material. It will not be just half, this half, and this half not. It is distributed, but the quantity is in percentage 50%. So as you can see, if you have instead at the same time a material where half-life is 4 years, that means that in 2 years you will have only this part. That's probably a stupid computation. That means that to get to this point, you will need 4 years instead of 2. And to get to this point, you will need 8 years instead of 4. What does that mean? That the longer the half-life, the less these atoms tend to explode. But the less they explode, if less atoms explode, they will take longer to be consumed, but also release less radiations because less of them are exploding. It's like when you're burning something. If you burn fuel, if you burn it quickly, you will burn reduce the amount of fuel very quickly, but also generate a lot of energy in a small amount of time, a very intense heat. But if you burn it slowly, you generate less heat, but it will last for much longer. So atoms that have long half-life, like uranium and plutonium, will generate a small amount of radiation, so are not very dangerous because they are not going to irradiate you a lot. Instead, atoms that have a small half-life irradiate you a lot, so they will be more damaging, because in a small amount of period they can cause you a lot of damages.
La fai con elementi che hanno
So
nell'ordine dell'anno.
The dirty bomb, you do it with the elements that have the half-life in the order of 1 year or 10 years,
Che sono
because they are
abbastanza breve,
half-life brief enough
comunque
to
avere un'attività
have an high specific high specific activity,
e quindi creare danno
so to create radiological damage,
allo stesso tempo
and at the same time
ancora abbastanza
they have
lunga che
an half-life that is still long-lived enough that the site doesn't decontaminate itself by itself in 3 months. So if you make a dirty bomb with 131 iodine,
in 3 mesi
in 3 months that is disappeared. That's of course is very dangerous, iodine 131, but in 3 months it's basically all burned up, and so there is no more radiation,
in 8 giorni,
because its half-life is 8 days, because it's very unstable.
distribuito di un fattore 2000.
So in 3 months is reduced to a factor 2000.
Tanti saluti. Se tu la fai con
If you do it with uranium-238, that has an half-life of 4 billion years,
e mezzo,
so it's very stable, not very stable, it's pretty stable, 4 billion years and a half,
ma questo
4 billion and a half years,
che la concentrazione
okay,
di uranio
but that means that
un'attività così con un tempo di
the
dimezzamento così lungo ti dà un'attività specifica talmente
the specific activity will be so low
Piazza San Pietro
that the stones in St. Peter's Square are more radioactive than that thing.
devi trovare la giusta
So you have to find the correct half-life, the correct compromise. Remember that uranium-238 is what they use for impoverished uranium, that is basically considered non-radioactive, but is of course an issue because uranium is toxic chemically.
Cosa che abbia un certo potenziale, ma che decada, non so, in 4-5 anni, quindi abbia un picco, diciamo, radioattivo in un lasso di tempo abbastanza stretto.
il radionuclide più studiato da questo punto di
The
vista
most studied radionuclide for this is the cobalt-60,
dimezzamento 8 anni
that has 8 years of half-life.
rilascio energetico, cioè decade rilasciando delle radiazioni
Decay is releasing pretty energetic radiation. Also, something that I didn't describe, when there is the decay, it can decay in different way. It can release what I draw was an alpha ray, that is an helium nucleus, but it could release also an electron, so it's beta ray, or a gamma ray, that is a light emission at high intensity.
energetiche. Infatti noi lo utilizziamo in ambito medico per sterilizzare.
In fact, we use cobalt-60 to sterilize.
Ci sono le camere al
So there are cobalt chambers. You put the instrument, you close your side, then you open the other side. The radiation from cobalt will sterilize the instrument. Then you close and you open them completely sterilized.
Il cobalto da questo punto di vista è un radionuclide
Cobalt from this side is very studied. Another studied is cesium-137,
dimezzamento 30
that has 30 years of half-life, and then there are others one.
Com'è la
90 strontium-90.
reperibilità di questi elementi?
How is the reparability of these elements?
sì, sono molto più
They're very easy, much easier to get, because they are used in hospital
utilizzando un radionuclide come il
structure, in hospital facilities, but also using radionuclide as cobalt.
ripeto,
I repeat, the effect
delle radiazioni
of radiation is marginal respect to the disruption that you create with from the social perspective, political perspective, and psychological perspective.
le radiazioni noi le rileviamo molto bene. Okay?
I explain because radiation, we are very good at detecting radiation. We are able to detect a single decay in a cubic meter of air or water.
Se un'area si contamina
So if an area is contaminated and you know that it's being contaminated, you will send your hazmat department with the anti-radiation suite to do the decontamination, but go with the bulldozer and you remove the first layer, you do all you need, and you do that until you don't have any more radioactivity. So from that point of view, the health consequences will not be that bad. You will have a huge economical cost, but manageable. The real problem is that the moment you have a detonation in a city and you get the information that is a dirty bomb, let's say this happened in Rome, then you have people, 400,000 people in complete chaos that start running away, supermarkets assaulted, street accidents, and at that point the damage are for billions. And there are in fact a lot of experts that are saying that we should start educating people on this aspect of radio protection, especially for this reason that in case there is an event, there is a panic reaction. Because let's say tomorrow explodes a device, a dirty device, a dirty cobalt device. For how strong the bomb can be, if it's a conventional bomb, the radiation will be dispersed in an area of about few tenths of meters of degrees, some few hundreds of meters of degrees. Also because you have buildings that make shielding. Is it important that people knew about this? Let's say if someone wanted to improve the damage, they will make it explode in air. Yes, no. Yes and no. Because at that point, we need to evaluate also with the specific the specific weight of the material. Saying as a terroristic aspect. It's clear, but the people that are outside of the involved area, they have to know that they can be safe, they can be calm. Otherwise, you risk that people in Perugia will start taking the car and run away to Milan because it's afraid of the radiation. Just to clarify, Rome and Perugia, what is 100, 200 kilometers away. I don't want to take the map out, but there are certain distance. They are not in the same region, let's say.
Molto intelligente, visto che ora la tendenza è utilizzare droni o comunque vettori remoti.
So there is an interesting question. Since now there is the tendency to use drones or vectors, remote vectors, is it possible that drones, in terms of potential, how much could be impactful for a dirty bomb? Could they do a swarm of drones with dirty bombs that basically spread a bomb into multiple drones? Let's say 1,000 drones with dirty bombs. Maybe I'm giving bad ideas. Virtually, yes. Again, a dirty bomb is something that could be even an artisanal device the moment you have access to radioactive material. And some materials potentially employable in that sense can be found in the hospitals. And the hospitals are not nuclear reactor protected surveilled with satellite and protected by the French Legion, the French military. So it's much easier to, let's say, steal in an hospital some materials. From the point of view of the international rights, international law, would be considered bacteriological weapon or a nuclear weapon? there is, it is considered radiological weapon. There is a specific definition. So for non-conventional, so for non-conventional events, there it's ECBRN.
Gli eventi non convenzionali e CBRN.
ECBRN.
Chemical.
Sorry, sorry, it was the verb. CBRN. So chemical, bacteriological, radiological and nuclear.
Quindi si distingue tra radiological e nuclear proprio in questo senso. Quindi una bomba sporca rientra nella
chemical, bacteriological, radiological and nuclear.
Una volta era NBC, nuclear biological.
One time was NBC, nuclear biological and chemical warfare.
Adesso è CBRN.
Now is CBRN.
Quindi ripeto, sulla stavo leggendo il commento in sovraimpressione. Quindi ripeto, per una bomba sporca, una volta che ti sei procurato il materiale radioattivo, la bomba sporca.
For dirty bomb, once you have gotten the radioactive material, you can do it also with the explosive made watching the YouTube video with the elements that you buy in the supermarket.
Adesso io di nuovo non voglio dare suggerimenti a nessuno, però so che esistono video.
And want to give suggestions, but I know there are videos where they can fabricate artisanal explosive with limited power, but that coupled with some radioactive material, then spread the material radioactive around. And again, and there is who from small children was used to do that, saltpeter, sulfur and carbon, but who knows. So that is the result for gunpowder, and I guess he did gunpowder as a child. Drone electronics would manage would resist the radioactivity that is transported. Tendenzially, yes. If you, there are some isotopes, some elements, radioactive elements that have some particular decays that interact with electronics, and they, in general, in the case the radioactivity is very intense, of course, there is always a interaction risk. But if you're talking about a dirty bomb that anyway is also sufficiently light to be transported by a drone, it will not have a high radioactive load, and will be enough to shield the electronics minimum. Again, there are some elements like uranium-232 that is generated by thorium, has a gamma decay that is very energetic, that completely fries any electronics. And that's the reason why thorium reactors are considered proliferation resistant, because you're not able to separate uranium-232 from uranium-233. That is the one that is the fissile uranium. So 232 makes the bomb completely uncontrollable. So you're not able to, you have no way to have a trigger, to have a digital electronic trigger with that chemical reaction. But we're talking about a completely different level. Also because if your objective, again, the objective of making a dirty bomb is making terrorism, so creating terror. So you don't need having that particular explosive or radioactive material. You just need that the detonation is strong enough to make 1 or 2 victims, and that the newspaper says terrorist attack with a dirty bomb in a tour in Paris, Rome. At that point, the effect you obtained in terms of damage, social and economical damage, is already much higher than what you would have obtained making
con una tonnellata di tritolo
instead of making detonate a bomb with 1 ton of TNT.
e 500 kg di cobalto 60.
Sì,
Or and 500 kilograms of so the damage, the psychological damage of a small bomb would be even more than 1 tons of TNT and 500 kilograms of cobalt 60, because even if a lot of that much cobalt 60 would be a disaster, the psychological damage of a bomb would be even higher.
il panico. Ti volevo chiedere, da un punto di vista tecnico,
So he's saying that the psychological damage of a small bomb is much more than real damage, physical damage of an even bigger dirty bomb.
influiscono queste strutture che sono state colpite?
Of course, the psychological damage of the bigger bomb would be even more devastating.
Dove vengono tenute, soprattutto influiscono queste strutture che sono state colpite?
How these structures that have been destroyed, how these affect the nuclear program? Where are kept these centrifuges? In these structures are
Sotterra, giusto per
they are underground,
capire quanto
just to
sono
know
fondamentali
how they are fundamental. For example, this is an electrical part that's been destroyed, electrical plant.
potrebbero aver rallentato
How could they slow down the production, and how is determined the relevant this part of the centrifuge for the entirety of the process?
dovresti stimare questi
If you have to estimate this video, this image, this satellite image that show damage at the external, this Natanz base,
centrifughe ti
where there were the centrifuges, how did they slow down the program?
Allora, è una domanda difficile, nel senso
So it's an odd question, because the centrifuges are underground, and it's known that they have not been damaged, if not minimally. I need to add, apparently, this video is from Saturday. Apparently, this week they have been damaged more deeper, at least in the Natanz facility, because they detected an higher flow of radiation. So probably they were damaged also below during the successive attacks.
parla di una marginale contaminazione alfa, perché potrebbe essere stato colpito magari qualcosa che dispersa un po' di
So the sensor talks about a small alpha radiation contamination, because it might have hit on something that spread some yellow cake,
di ossido di triorato,
so dust of uranium trioxide,
che è la fase
that is the
pre-enrichment.
pre-enrichment phase, again before it is made into a gas.
Però non c'è stata, cioè se fossero
But
state
there
delle
is-
centrifughe con l'esafluoro,
If there have been centrifuges with uranium hexafluoride inside, the contamination would be much higher and detectable even on the surface, I guess, because it is a gas and so it leaks much easier
con una maggiore intensità.
with an iron. Okay.
Quindi le centrifughe non sono state
So the centrifuge has not been hit directly.
centrifughe sono
Again, Saturday,
la parte fondamentale.
and the centrifuges are the fundamental part. Without centrifuges, you don't enrich it.
Quindi però sono state colpite
But at the same time, have been hit the electrical power plants.
nella foto
You can see very clearly in the picture. I should show the picture.
di energia
The centrifuges need energy
girare molto basso.
to be
dal punto di
spun,
vista militare sarebbe il next step, cioè in questo
because from the military perspective would be the next step.
step hanno
So in this step, they destroyed several air defense,
tanto che i droni
so that even Israeli drones flies freely
dove volevano.
when they
Oggi
wanted.
si parlava di una ventina di aerei israeliani che per 2 ore
Today talked about Israeli planes that for 2 hours stayed in the Iranian space.
questo significa che
That means that Iranian have
perso molto
lost a lot of their
quasi azzerato.
capacity. Maybe it's been completely destroyed. Remember, this is from Saturday.
Quindi il danno è superficiale, non hanno
So the damage is surface damage. They didn't use bunker buster bomb that has bomb. They used probably some JDAM
o probabilmente
or
hanno
some
o altri
Jericho's another cruise missile
aviolanciati.
sent by
Il
planes.
passo sarebbe quella di colpire le strutture
Next step is to destroy the underground facilities. And again, this week there were news that they hit Natanz also underground. And in that case, they would use some bunker buster
in profondità, di
because they need to hit much deeper, very deep.
solito in profondità su
How deep are these facilities?
strutture. È una domanda particolare perché
Is a particular question because I try to understand if the Israeli capability, because they have a certain type of bunker buster, if they are enough or if they need the MOP, MOP, that are some very big bomb that American use on the B2 Spirit that can get up to 60 meters deep in the ground.
Allora,
So
a Natanz,
in Natanz, it seems that the centrifuges are at 20-30 meters of depth. They are also in more than one level, while in the other sides,
di nuovo come si chiama?
that is Fordo,
Fordo.
Isfahan? Ah, Fordo, Isfahan, sì.
No, Fordo, l'altro sito dove ci sono centrifughe. Le centrifughe sono ancora più in profondità.
the centrifuges are at 50 meters under the ground. And I know that with certainty, because Fordo was a site that the Iranians tried to keep hidden,
di cui hanno
and that they had admitted the existence in 2009,
dei report
just after, only after there were some reports from various secret services,
occidentali
Western secret services
che
and Israeli secret services, that proved the existence of these enrichment sites. And that was from that started all the situation about the Iranian nuclear program,
nel senso dalla scoperta del sito di Fordo.
from the discovery of the Fordo sites. Because they're like, oh, why are you doing this inside a mountain? What do you want to cover?
Questo dettaglio, come hai detto,
Besides this detail,
sono stati distrutti
as you said, there have been destroyed the aerial defenses,
ad un
and this could make think about a preliminary attack. This is a thing. Wait, is this? I didn't see. This is Natanz. Should be Natanz. They should be Natanz.
sono stati distrutte delle difese aeree e questo potrebbe far
This video is about
pensare
Natanz.
ad un attacco preliminare a cui seguirà.
So this could make think about a preliminary attack that will then
Ho messo il video, non so se mi si sente.
Sì, sì, ti sentiamo.
will show
Faccio vedere come è fatta la base di Natanz con le strutture.
Ok,
They
perché
pause.
non,
They got confused.
come dicevo, potrebbe preludere ad un attacco più in profondità.
Could be the prelude for an attack with deeper attack with deeper buster. Anyway, the centrifuges at the moment are out of order, not because they've been hit directly, but because they requires a lot of energy to spin. Remember that this is from Saturday, so now they're probably being hit actually also directly, or partially at least.
Mediamente un impianto di
On average,
3% dell'energia
3%
contenuta nell'uranio
of the energy used contained in uranium is used in the enrichment phase,
e questa percentuale si alza
and this percentage gets higher and higher if the uranium is at a higher level for military grade. My understanding in this, I'm not sure, not entirely sure, but if you use that uranium to produce energy in a nuclear power plant, 3% of that energy should be used to compensate the amount of energy you needed to enrich uranium. This is my understanding of this sentence that he's saying. Not entirely sure, but this is my understanding.
per cui sicuramente al momento
So for this reason,
centrifughe non sono.
surely at the moment those centrifuges are not working.
Dopodiché sappiamo che l'Iran ha già
After all, we know that Iran has a stockpile with uranium with sufficient enrichment,
quasi sufficiente
or almost sufficient, so that doesn't require a lot of work to be brought to 90%. So this move will prevent them to accumulate other, at least temporarily. So we see if they will be able to rebuild these lines and stations.
prima, cioè
And it could go in the direction you were saying that before. because since one bomb or 10 gun type bombs are demonstrative, but they are useless, especially against the Israeli air defense. But if you start having a much bigger quantity, then the possibility to saturate Israeli defense start being real, and at that point it's possible that Israel starts to is simply trying to prevent this stockpile of atomic weapons, to avoid that Iran could have sufficient nuclear power to get the target, the device to target.
Sai cosa sto pensando? Il fatto che da un punto di vista militare, se tu volevi solo colpire queste strutture,
you know what I'm thinking? If from a military perspective you only wanted to hit these structures, you didn't need to do all the rest. So also killing the generals, trying to hit other things, and also try to destroy all these air defense that have not been destroyed only in the area.
più o meno a occidente, più o meno in questa zona qui. Loro sono andati a colpire
They also started hitting. So these buildings are mostly in the center and in the west, but they also started hitting targets in the east. So remember, the west is closer to Israel. That means that they disintegrated with some air defense suppression and destruction attack, much more terrain that they actually would have needed to justice these sites. But not only. If Israel wanted to limit themselves to sites, they already demonstrate to be able to do informatic attack, because Natanz has been already attacked by the Stuxnet attack in 2012, I think, because the centrifuges are operated remotely. So the difference with the nuclear power plants, the centrifuges require internet connection, or at least a certain type of connection. So Israel was able to stop the centrifuges with an informatic attack. It's clear that Israel is using in certain ways the Iranian nuclear plan as an excuse to bring to end an objective that is wider.
In questo, diciamo, mi sento di darti ragione.
Perché è un po' troppo quello
It's because it's a bit too much what they're doing.
rispetto a questi obiettivi che potevano colpire tranquillamente.
Expect these targets they could hit only on a superficial level. It's not needed only. This makes me think that is a preparative phase for a further attack that is still opens an attack that opens perspective, leave opens for dialogue, because if they wanted to destroy especially the parts that are at 20 meters, they could have done it immediately now. Instead, they slow it down, giving time for diplomacy, let's say. Instead, Iran chooses the military response. Today there are also threats from, again, Saturday there are threats to attack to other countries. So Iran threatened other countries that could potentially intervene. US, England, France. That would be a present to Netanyahu. If they send rockets to an American base, the Americans will have the cues to join. And it's really something that they don't need in Iran, because as we see. And this is the worst thing, because Americans have the B2 spirits close to the Indian Ocean, actually. And the Israeli needs only one thing: this MOP bomb that goes up to 60 meters on the ground, and that thing would actually really destroy those sites. And most of the dirty jobs they would have done. So, stopping a moment for all this part, the issue is, from my perspective, is first of all, it's not only about the nuclear program. Iran supported all these proxies that continuously attacked Israel. They sent 2 direct rockets attack onto Israel last year. So they don't want just to stop the nuclear plan, because this is not the only thing that they have to worry about. But then there is other thing. Assuming that they only wanted to stop the nuclear plan, they say they could have just hit those facilities. No, I would say no, because okay, they hit those facilities, then Iran responds with launching all the rockets they have on Israel. Not nuclear, but still doing a lot of damage. So what do you have to do? You need to disable this rockets capability that can damage, this offensive capability that can damage Israel. And to do that, you will need before to destroy the air defense to make sure that then you can use the planes to destroy the air offense capability to shield yourself. And then there is these other possibilities, and you want to do that in all the country because you don't want to have them stockpiles in the east of Iran, because then they can use them still to attack you. But then there is this other thing. There is this other hypothesis that is a bit more strange, a bit more a speculation for mine, is that they have not the capability to destroy Fordo without this American bomb, unless maybe they use a tactical nuke. So it is possible that they try to get full control, so that they start either a bombing campaign so heavy that they basically dig a hole in Fordo, going deeper and deeper, using a lot of bunker buster bombs. Bit strange. Or they use a commando, and to use a commando they need the best control possible. Or there is the other option that make complete change of regime in Iran, and then they get some kind of diplomatic access to those areas to destroy them. The other thing is, again, if they still Iran want to destroy them, this regime want to destroy them, so they might use the opportunity to finish for good.
Israeliani, quindi c'è ancora uno spiraglio per mercanteggiare ed è stato volutamente lasciato aperto dagli israeliani, sempre se gli iraniani non continueranno a colpire Tel Aviv un po' in maniera indiscriminata, anche perché
He's saying that there is still a path open for diplomacy if the Iranians don't keep attacking Israel in Tel Aviv in an indiscriminate way, because the precision of their rockets is very lacking. Again, I'm not sure. We will probably do an analysis better with actually showing what was it, what was not it. I'm not sure that Iran is not doing what the Palestinians did. The Palestinians targeted specifically civilians. That was horrifying, but Iran doesn't seem to necessarily do that. Seems just that they maybe are targeting something reasonable, but then they are not so accurate, so they hit a lot of civilians. And at the moment, I think they hit only civilians. But also there is Israel that is not really prone to giving information if they hit a military facility. So.
Con delle campagne aeree, a meno che tu non abbia un dominio totale e gli altri letteralmente ti sparano con le AK, è difficile vincere una guerra.
So talking about winning the entire war is hard to do only with an aerial campaign.
Iran è un paese enorme.
Iran is a huge country with a lot of people with respect to Israel. Remember, Israel has, I think, 10 million people, and Iran has 90 million people. Italy has, for example, 60, Germany has 80 million people. So Israel doesn't have the capability to make. So no one in this case has completely the capability to completely fold the other, I would say, unless there is a revolution. You can do more or less what happened in Libya. So you can hope more or less that hope more in the popular insurrection rather than your capability to destroy all the rockets launcher and stuff like that. today we're talking about,
Pare che
again, Saturday, they talk about the fact that Israel attacked some airports,
sia
and apparently
dentro alcuni
there were
problemi,
inside certain planes,
iraniana non
but
c'è
the
problema per
Iran
anni.
aviation was not,
Perciò
Iranian aviation was not a problem
fai
for Israel
qualcosa
anyway.
per ridurre
So you do
l'altro e
something
avvicinarsi ad
to
acconsentire a
push
qualche
the
problema
other
per
into
vincerla a
diplomacy,
distanza
let's say. But winning this at distance
perché non
is
vogliono spararsi missili per 5 anni.
impossible unless they want to shoot rockets to each other for the next 5 years.
Sì, beh, su questo sono d'accordo, ma infatti queste poi sono anche considerazioni sulle quali per me è molto difficile esprimere. Primo perché non è un tema su cui sono così competente, e in secondo luogo perché quando ti esprimi su una cosa, cioè quando ti esprimi su questi temi diventa un puttanaio alla sezione commenti che direi.
Okay, this is
E poi c'è
not
quindi
important.
su YouTube che già stanno degenerando abbastanza rapidamente.
Basically, you want to express on the technical part rather
Ho
than
cercato in queste
the political part.
dare pareri squisitamente tecnici su quello che sono i processi
So you
di
try to give a technical
costruzione, assemblaggio, funzionamento di un ordine
perspective
e quindi
on this
No,
topic.
guarda, è già stato illuminante per il fatto che così almeno abbiamo un certo margine, eccetera, la sicurezza che non è che abbiamo la bomba pronta domani e quindi molto probabilmente l'esagerazione israeliana è più dovuta al discorso di ciò che potrebbero arrivare a fare, che non ha un pericolo.
So he's saying that we know that we will not have the bomb tomorrow, so the Israeli reaction is possible due to what they could potentially do rather than what they actually is a real threat. But again, something that I should have added to the discourse before is that remember also that to push people to move, you need to create urgency. Because if you don't create urgency, they will say, maybe they will agree with you, but like, yeah, I agree with you, but not now. This is not the time. And then they will postpone, procrastinate until it's too late. So there is also the reason to put this urgency.
Veramente imminente. E secondo me la tempistica del fatto che li hanno anche un po' beccati a fare delle operazioni di resistenza all'interno può avere
So saying also the fact that we already said this before.
una serie di tempistiche come i famosi 60 giorni, dovevano fare la riunione per questa discussione.
So there was also the fact that the 60 days. So he's talking about Trump said at some point Twitter said on Truth that they gave Iran 60 days for the negotiation, and the Israeli waited the 61st day to actually launch the attack. So Trump could say, look, exactly when the time expired. And it's really not clear if Trump is involved in this or not.
Guarda caso a 61esimo giorno a mezzanotte invece attaccano, cosa che è stata denunciata anche da Trump, mi dà da pensare che un po' se l'erano programmata e un po' hanno dovuto agire adesso, ma ancora non sono arrivati a fare veramente del male al programma iraniano. Da quello che dici te, per ora è semplicemente rallentato, ma non è che c'era un'imminenza di arma nucleare. Allora,
questo per quanto riguarda i danni, diciamo, fisici. Poi hanno anche colpito.
So this is about the physical damage. They just slowed it down, but there are also the damage to the researchers, physical people, and I have no idea how much that could slow down. In instance, Israel destroyed with their nuclear attack, and some people where the competence was fundamental to proceed, then maybe it's more relevant. They keep killing physician. Okay, that is sad because it's maybe it's sad because it's a physician too. But he's saying also that maybe are not the most supporter of the regime, maybe, but they're just exploited for the knowledge. Let's see how fast is for Iran to replace these kind of people. It's not simple to replace an engineer able to work on this. Especially in Iran. I've heard someone else who said probably they made a lot of physicists in Iran. I don't know.
Dal punto di vista tecnico-militare ci interessava capire che sanno di averli rallentati, ma la questione non è chiusa.
No, non è chiusa.
X tempo per parlamentare.
Diciamo che il TLDR è che l'Iran comunque non avrebbe potuto avere una bomba inefficiente e indeliverabile in 3 mesi o una bomba efficiente e deliverabile in 18 mesi, 2 anni. Quindi sicuramente non era all'orizzonte l'Iran potenza nucleare.
As you're saying that we say that up until now.
Ulteriormente rallentati e adesso, come dici tu, probabilmente li vogliono portare a tavolo delle trattative o li vogliono o sperano magari nell'insurrezione popolare, questo non lo so.
Sì, direi che c'è ancora margine prima del peggio, ecco. Il peggio se verrà.
They're repeating what they've said until now, so I'm going fast here.
Diciamo ferale al programma, è un rallentamento ancora però gli hanno calato le braghe, così. Il danno superficiale, ma invece alla difesa generale del paese quello invece è un danno che guarda che
to the general defense of the country, the damage is huge.
Sì, ci attaccherete un po' per salvare la faccia, ma non esagerate perché sono veramente disintegriamo tutto il programma. E quando vai a disintegrare tutto il programma nucleare, a questo punto la minaccia israeliana è vi distruggiamo anche tutte le raffinerie, e poi è quello che vi permette di finanziare
So
il programma.
now they're starting also to hit refineries. That is what helps to finance the Iranian program. Remember that the refineries is much more a sensitive target because that will affect prices for oil to all the world, so all the countries will start to get possibly upset, but especially China gets a lot of these
Andiamo alla radice del problema.
refineries.
Chiarissimo.
Allora, io direi che abbiamo detto quello che potevamo dire da questa essenza, quindi
C'è questa domanda che hanno fatto forse già
Okay.
prima.
Okay, this one is interesting.
Allora, in realtà
Do uranium or plutonium based weapons have an expiry date?
le bombe all'uranio
Actually, uranium bombs tendentially no, they don't have an expiry because the decay time of 235 uranium is in the order of the
milioni di anni,
hundreds of millions of years,
quindi non è
something like that.
assolutamente
So it's not really problematic from that perspective.
quelle al plutonio.
But the plutonium one instead are a bit more at risk. Plutonium has a shorter half-life, but it's not the issue. It's not an half-life time because we're talking about 24,000 years.
rispetto a 50 anni fa e
So the quantity of plutonium now respect to 50 years ago is basically the same.
la stessa. Però le particelle alfa comunque
But alpha particles that are produced from the decay can damage the electronics of the devices, of the triggers. So on the short term, no, the electronics is sufficiently shielded, but on the long term you need to maintain it.
particolarmente vera
The thing is particularly true for hydrogen bombs, because then there is the effect of the possible effects of possible penetration of deuterium in the damper, because deuterium being hydrogen chemically tends to be very light and get inside the
gli atomi di idrogeno si infilano proprio
in the the net of the metallic in the net of the metallic shell that is surrounding them. Yes, hydrogen has in general this problem. Basically, it's very small, so it is able to enter very small gaps. Even if you have a piece of metal, like in space, like satellites, there are tanks that contains hydrogen, and the issue with hydrogen is that it literally gets inside the metal and creates problem because it weakens the material and then also leaks. So yes, it's actually something. Also, I guess the SpaceX uses hydrogen oxygen motors, and the tanks for hydrogen don't last long because they actually have this problem of leak, this problem of not leak, this problem of hydrogen that enters in the metals and weakens it.
nel caso delle bombe idrogeno che hanno
So in the case of hydrogen bomb that have this deuterium lithium chamber, some also deuterium tritium chamber,
un ordigno con
Ad-
deuterio è fatto per essere detonato entro
a device with deuterium tritium is made to being detonated
dalla fabbrica
in the first 2 years, in 2 years after the fabrication,
perché il trizio di
because the tritium half-life is 12 years.
invece
So just to clarify, remember when you talk about hydrogen and deuterium, tritium, so hydrogen has 1 proton, deuterium 1 proton plus 1 neutron, tritium has 1 proton and 2 neutrons, so it's chemically again still hydrogen, but is even heavier, but is not stable as deuterium, is unstable, so will tend to decay.
un ordigno deuterio-litio che è molto più sensato,
A deuterium lithium device
molto più
that is more reasonable,
pesante,
even if it's slightly heavier,
che c'è il litio che può sfuggire. Un ordigno
needs to be maintained because there is lithium that can leak out. Strange lithium maybe means hydrogen that can leak out.
plutonio va
A plutonium device maintains the electronics, repeating.
l'ordigno all'uranio in generale è abbastanza
Uranium instead
non scade.
doesn't expire.
Allora, domanda, l'Iran minaccia il blocco dello stretto di Hormuz a causa di questo.
Iran question. Iran threatens the block of the Hormuz Straits
Intervento occidentale.
due to could this cause the Western
Di
intervention?
molti paesi. Diciamo che se lo fa può ricevere solo dei danni quando abbia
There is the economy of several countries involved if they block the strait, so could involve a lot of countries. It would be a damage for Iran, so it would be really a problem for Iran unless they want to hit everyone, but that's not really a good strategy. So first news, we were talking a few minutes ago, again Saturday, there will be the first news about Israeli bombings
per quanto riguarda il ricevimento di gas.
for what is about for a natural deposit, a natural gas refinery. Yam. It's interesting that they. So this, I think this was the first attack to energetic resources, so that was important at the time.
Colpire probabilmente i loro impianti di gas naturale e probabilmente seguiranno quelli del petrolio. Quindi noi stavamo facendo congetture sul periodo, diciamo, di latenza.
Yes, they will attack then the research. I'll spoil that they will attack energy facilities.
Quindi siamo già un passo oltre, non c'è nemmeno il periodo della mediazione su quello che avverrà dopo. Credo che la risposta iraniana di ieri stia già scatenando gli attacki israeliani.
So they saying that yesterday, so Friday, Iranian response already moved the caused the Israeli to call out to move out of the negotiation. In the worst case, if they wanted to, no. In the worst case, if they started throwing each other nukes, how much would travel nuclear radiation respect to the two countries? Remember that radiation doesn't really travel; it travels the particles that then explode, visually like decay and release radiation. It depends by several factors. So if the nuclear bomb, you do it with detonation on the ground or detonation at 500 meters of altitude, because in one case you maximize the fallout. Now I don't want to say something stupid, but if you detonate it on the ground, you have higher fallout because the neutron generated will hit the particles on the ground, generating radioactive isotopes, to my understanding. In the other case, you maximize the immediate destructive impact. Again, I think the maximum destructive impact immediately is on air, counterintuitively, but because if you detonate it on the ground, you basically have a shielding, like most of the energy will be delivered to the ground below it, and so will be wasted. Instead, if you detonate on air, it will have more space to get wider, and so we'll have a wider detonation space, a wider destruction range. Then it depends about the power of the weapons, depends of the wind speed, wind direction. There are a lot of stuff to consider. Generally, an atomic bomb contains few kilograms of fissile, so it will not like Chernobyl Central, when there were hundreds of tons of uranium that were 2 tons of fissile uranium, but you know, it's still a much bigger fallout. So you can expect radiological consequences in around 30 kilograms. But we are talking to consequences visible in 20-30 years of distance and preventable with adequate treatment. So in in the 30 kilometers of detonation, you can distribute iodine pills. You can tell people to not drink tap water, stuff like that.
parte
I could talk about the peaks, but maybe there is not enough time.
il centro della detonazione, quindi
Besides the center of the detonation, so the first 300 meters where everything gets vaporized, and 2 kilometers where everything gets on fire and gets destroyed by the shockwave.
a parte quell'area lì, fuoco e viene distrutto dall'onda d'urto.
Besides that area,
Quell'area lì, al di fuori,
outside of that, you have some radiological consequences, yes, but they are preventable and,
se non prevenibili,
if not preventable, absorbable, manageable.
Questo è quello che potrebbe succedere.
This is what could happen
Davvero dovessero avvenire
in a case they were ready to happen.
Domanda, abbiamo stime delle capacità NBC delle truppe iraniane? Poche.
Do we have estimates about NBC capability of Iranian troops? So I guess the capability to fight with the nuclear, bacteriological and chemical situation. Last experience they had was in Iraq-Iran war, and gas didn't work well for neither of the sides because the Soviet Union weapons, Soviet Union means, let's say, weren't really well sealed, so didn't work really well for them. So Saddam started to gas the Kurds rather than the Iranian.
Non hanno un bello storico di utilizzo di armi chimiche l'uno nell'altro, né di equipaggiamento per dotare l'esercito, ma un po' tutti nei russi nemmeno più
So they don't have a good story. But not even Russian and Ukrainian can work can fight the dissuasion. This strong fear was in the 80s, but now is not really. It's much weaker. Is much less pressing situation, because I think in the 80s the plan was for Soviet Russia to start sending tactical nukes, destroy like Germany and Italy, and then march inside the fallout through Germany to get to France and stuff like that.
Quello che hanno deve essere piuttosto vecchio, i filtri delle maschere, eccetera, comunque invecchiano.
So what they have now is still pretty
molto vecchio.
old.
I filtri scadono.
Filters expires.
Israeliana.
What would be the possible risk of an attack with ballistic missiles, Iranian ballistic missiles, to the nuclear Israeli nuclear power plant of Dimona? It's not a power plant, sorry, nuclear facility. Dimona.
Allora, Dimona non è una centrale nucleare.
Instead, okay, says Dimona is not a nuclear power plant. Is a nuclear reactor, probably for military purposes. Of course, the Israeli neither confirm nor deny. The reactor is underground, so there will probably not be big damages, but at least there will be big damages for
grossi danni, o meglio, ci sarebbero grossi danni perché è stata lanciata una bomba nucleare.
There will be big damages because of being thrown an atomic bomb. I guess the question was, I forgot the question, but it's replying as if the question was dropping a nuclear bomb on the Dimona plant. No, okay, it's just he's correcting himself. No, I didn't say it's just ballistic missile. No, okay. Oh, either they have bunker busters. In this case, there could be a limited release of radioactivity, but being it underground, it's limited. No attack in a nuclear facility will do enough damage as the same if we talk about victims, that economical damages to civil population. Any attack to a nuclear facility will do less damage than the same attack to the same attack on a city. So if it sends ballistic missiles on Tel Aviv, it will probably do more damage than sending it on this nuclear facility. So since I read that someone said that Israel wants to attack the nuclear facilities, nuclear power plants in Iran. Iran has one nuclear power plant that we share. The other one are nuclear facilities, military or research. There is only one power plant for the energy production, and it's not been touched, and I don't think will be touched because it's a structure that is totally civilian without any possible military dual use. serves simply to generate
potrebbe essere
electric
attaccato nel caso
energy.
Israele volesse creare dei blackout.
Could potentially be attacked in the case Israel wants to create some blackouts in Iran.
Centrale nucleare
Attack the power plant, attack all the power plants, also attack also that one. And again, I will add, it will do that to the transformers rather than to the core.
su questo,
So on this,
che la centrale di Bushehr non sia tra gli
I believe the power plant will not be under the targets, and if it were, there will be not there will not be radiological damage.
era
Another question I've seen is hydrogen bombs. How do they work?
più radiazioni o meno,
And if they produce more or less radiation of the nuclear bombs?
producono più radiazioni
Nuclear bombs produce hydrogen bombs produce more radiation respect to nuclear bombs
innanzitutto perché
because first of all the trigger is still a nuclear bomb.
hai un core di fissione che fa parte
You have a fission core that starts everything.
hai
Then you have
neutroni, hai la
neutrons.
pressione e la temperatura generate
Then you
dalla
have the
fissione che
pressure and temperature generated at fission core that induce the fusion
del deuterio
of deuterium and tritium.
neutroni di fissione che ti
And
fissionano il litio
then you have fission neutrons that fission lithium,
litio fonde con
and
il
lithium
litio
then
fissionando da tritium
so lithium fissions. So lithium. So you have the fission in the normal nuclear bomb, plutonium bomb. These neutrons will hit lithium. They will break it apart. That will produce tritium, and this tritium will fuse with the deuterium, generating
fonde col deuterio
the nuclear fusion.
creando una fusione, ma la fusione genera
And the fusion generates neutrons at very high energy,
neutroni rendono
and high energy neutrons will make everything radioactive.
quindi il fallout
So the fallout of a nuclear bomb, of a hydrogen bomb, is worse respect to the one of a nuclear bomb,
semplice a fissione.
a simple fission bomb.
Allora, end state sono difficili perché
Maybe you should have that. Someone said that they make more fallout, but they are dropped at higher altitude, so they make less fallout in the end, because something like that. I don't know. Maybe you should not be quoted on that.
tutto questo programma sembra essere molto intenzionato a far cadere. Ci sono alcuni
So, can you theorize an end state for this war? It's talking about
dettagli,
possibly
no?
regime change.
Il nome della missione, no? Rising Lion.
So the name of the mission is Rising Lion,
Al leone,
is a reference to
può essere ultimamente si è visto
the Iranian lion of the monarchy.
il principe
And lately they talk about the nephew of the Shah.
del genere, dall'altra parte il leone di Giuda.
They saw recently the nephew of the Shah talking about liberation of Iran, but also could be the Judah lion. And so they don't know if it's referred to the Judah lion. Often the Israeli does that, or if to the Iran. I'm saying for me 100% this is a reference to a change of regime in Iran. 100%. I'll bet everything on it. That's a reference that's purposely done on that. They also explicitly said that they want the civilians to rebel or something like that. So 100% sure about that. There is the thing that maybe they also reference something in Hebrew, in Hebraic tradition, whatever, but 100% they refer to an uprising. They want an uprising, a change of regime in Iran.
bibliche, eccetera. L'end state è difficile da ottenere perché comunque se rimangono su questo livello, cioè il danneggiamento superficiale di questo programma nucleare, comunque il programma può riprendere.
So the end state so if they remain in this at this level, the nuclear program of Iran could continue,
Energetiche, cose del genere, non vanno neanche a toccare la parte.
could restart, because they didn't even destroy centrifuge, especially now they destroyed someone in Natanz, some centrifuges in Natanz, but not in Fordow.
Vuoi ottenere il rallentamento, l'hai ottenuto.
If you want to obtain the slowdown, you obtain it.
Vuoi ottenere una parlamentazione
Do you
che
want
loro
to-
vengano a chiedere qualcosa in cambio, quindi dicono ok, smettiamo col programma nucleare, mettiamoci d'accordo?
Do they want some diplomacy? So they say, okay, we stop the nuclear plant and we we agree on this so that we stop and we get diplomatically, we will see it. I have to say that slowing them down in this way will not be a definitive solution. They cannot keep constantly bombing in Iran. A better longest-lasting solution would be a diplomatic solution, so to get an agreement to not enrich uranium anymore. But the best solution for the Israeli, what they probably want, is the change of regime. So they have someone that not only doesn't want to enrich uranium to make a bomb, but someone that doesn't want to destroy Israel. And that is very important to me. I think it's very important.
Di clausola iniziale memoria della batteria, cioè imporre all'avversario la tua volontà politica è molto difficile, a meno che tu non conti di supportare un'insurrezione popolare e buttare giù il regime praticamente, o con un'invasione terrestre, l'unico modo con cui potresti ottenere, non è detto che riguarda tutto il paese, anche un pezzettino per dare supporto a chi vuole andare a combattere contro il regime, ma sono scenari apocalittici per Israele. È vero che Netanyahu 2 giorni fa ha richiamato 3 divisioni di riservisti, che già fanno pensare, però sarebbe un'impresa, secondo me, ben al di fuori.
So Netanyahu called it 3 division of reservists, so that's a lot of people that make say that might think something, but he says that it's very hard to make a land. I would say land invasion is completely impossible. The only thing they can hope for is, of course, the rebellion. What he's also saying.
Gli eventuali, diciamo, wannabe insurrezionalisti ottenere la superiorità aerea del dominio dei cieli e quindi praticamente supportare questa insurrezione dall'aria, cosa che noi abbiamo potuto fare ad esempio contro Gheddafi. Poi non avevamo un end state nemmeno noi, cioè nel senso abbiamo aiutato a far fuori Gheddafi, poi per il dopo buonanotte. Qui l'end state forse sarebbe il ritorno del re. Questi sono gli scenari fattibili, ma quello più a corto termine fattibile è quello del rallentamento, siamo lì. L'altro è quello di farli venire incontro a dire ok, non sviluppiamo il nucleare, vediamo di prendere parte. Questi sono i due più fattibili. Il resto si parlerebbe veramente di un coinvolgimento non solo dei paesi, ma anche di tanti.
I think the objective is just
sarebbe un end state estremamente rischioso da cercare di perpetrare.
I think the objective is simply the change of
Non vedo altre, vedo un sacco di domande, ma sono tutte per te, Mirko, quindi io
direi che
the change of regime.
sta continuando, stanno bombardando in questo momento sito di estrazione del gas più grande. Tra l'altro pare che sia anche in cogestione con l'Oman, quindi si aprono anche spirali su altri, diciamo, coinvolti.
So it's closing.
Ci staremo dietro. Tanto è inutile fare la telecronaca dei singoli.
I say the end state for me is they want the change of regime, they want uprising or something, a change of regime, and maybe also the destruction of the facilities and a slowdown of the military resources of Iran. It's okay. Okay, I finished. So, I will close now.
Sempre su temi, no? Perché il mondo si ama, la sfida del Pacifico, perché il prossimo grande casino.